FTX crashes and everybody's looking for who to blame. And in this video, I'm going to discuss why I think the promoters and the people on YouTube are not responsible. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Mckensy Long. I've been in the financial industry for almost a decade. I have helped thousands of clients and students be educated about how money works, and I've helped hundreds of agents in the industry. And as I'm sure you've seen everything going on with FTX and a lot of different cryptos, there's a couple reasons why I think the people who have promoted it, the celebrities, the people on YouTube, the reasons why I don't think they should be held responsible. And just to note, I'm gonna make a follow-up video to this as well on the reasons why I do think that they're responsible and maybe some things that they should do to kind of help fix the situation if they can. But specifically in this video, I want to talk about why I don't think they're responsible. Hopefully you watch both of them. Give me your comments and feedback on what you believe. I've looked into this in multiple different ways, also my perspective as a financial professional. And here's why I don't think they should be held responsible. And let me just start with my personal take on what I noticed as a financial professional going through really the influx of cryptocurrency, it becoming popular, and also my perspective as a YouTuber and the pressures that were put on us to talk about some of these things. And the reason why I think this is important to talk about is because there's a ton of pressure from the crowd, from the masses, to talk about those things. So I think about my responsibilities as a financial professional and some of the conversations that I had while all of this was going on. There were clients who wanted to move lots of money out of their accounts and put it into things like FTX and cryptocurrencies. There were lots of people that I had relationships with, whether it was friends or family, that really got excited about the crypto space. And the challenges that happened there were very difficult to handle and not want to get into the crypto conversation and maybe wanting to recommend them to people. And there were many conversations that I had where I actually lost the relationship with those people for not getting into crypto. So there was this huge pressure for financial professionals to direct people and help guide them in crypto. Now, I personally, as I looked into it, it didn't really relate to me. I didn't understand a lot of the hype behind it. I couldn't really wrap my head around why it was so exciting for people and really what the long-term goal was going to be. Now, I am excited about the blockchain and a lot of those things. There was a lot of cool applications that came out around that, but the actual application of it didn't necessarily pertain to me and maybe my engineering background. I just couldn't really see how it was going to be impacted long-term, even if it was adopted as some form of tracking of currency or whatever it might be. So I particularly couldn't find a way for me to believe in it, and I don't really invest in things that I don't believe in. And unfortunately, some of the people that I was working with felt as if I wasn't really guiding them in the proper direction and I wasn't willing to help them. So I lost those clients, I lost those friends, I lost talking to some of those family members simply because I wasn't willing to step into the realm of advising about cryptocurrencies as well. So I can only imagine the pressure of some of these guys who had massive followings, both as a financial professional, but also as a YouTuber. And part of the challenge that I think happened through COVID was we turned to social media even more. And unfortunately, if you're a YouTuber, part of what you have to do, it's kind of like being a news anchor. I'm not going to necessarily put it that far. We get to tell the truth at least, but besides that, the pressure there of being early on things and talking about things while people are excited about it is really important to be able to get views and to get subscribers. So these YouTubers are also under a ton of pressure to talk about pertinent things. And I think that got them into a lot of trouble. Now, does that excuse them from the things that they've done? I don't think so, but I hope that when you throwing out sentences for these people, that you also have the ability to put yourself into their shoes, because it's easy to sit back and play the victim card and want to penalize everybody, which is what we'll talk about here in just a little bit. Now, what was interesting was these lawsuits have actually broken down into a couple different categories. And the first one is celebrities, paid actors, and the people of sports, that kind of stuff. And so we're talking about a couple different groups. Now, we've got the Shaquille O'Neals and the Tom Bradys and Steph Curry, those kinds of guys who were promoting it, were paid to do so. And some of them, I think they was over $50,000 per month. I would bet the YouTubers were probably even more than that. So they're getting paid tons of money to promote these things, but they're not really seen as financial professionals, although a lot of them have businesses. Shaq is supposed to be a great businessman, but they're not really looked at in that light as much as really the second group. And the second group is going to be a lot of the YouTubers, the Graham Steffens, the Meet Kevin, a lot of those guys we're talking about FTX and cryptocurrencies as well. Now, what's interesting to me is Kevin O'Leary is actually in the first group, even though I think he's more of a financial professional business guy. I wonder if he should be in that second category, but either way, it's interesting how they've kind of divided it into these two different categories, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Now, the first category, I think they're going to get off pretty easy, simply because we don't expect them to understand business and finance. We don't really look to them as financial professionals. We can understand that they're clearly marketing a product. We wouldn't necessarily be upset if a product that we bought from somebody else that was recommending Coca-Cola ended up having cyanide in it. We wouldn't really then go back and blame the actor for promoting Coca-Cola. If we had bought a Lincoln, we're not going to go back and blame Matthew McConaughey because our Lincoln caught on fire and we lost our family's lives, right? Like, or Samuel L. Jackson because we went and got a credit card with Capital One and now we're in debt. So the question becomes, how far are we going to be able to give responsibility to people who are recommending a product or a service? And the reason why this gets kind of interesting to me is because we have this widening gray area in society. We want the freedom to do whatever it is we want to do, whether it's sexually, whether it's morally, whether it's with our finances. We want government, or we want, it's weird because we want government regulation, but to do what we want to do. So it's this interesting dynamic that's happening now, that we want this area to do whatever we want to do, but we also want the maximum penalty for whoever operates and profits in the gray area, and it ends up going sour. So we almost are suing based on regret more than we are based on whether they did something wrong or not. And the reason why this starts to come up is because the whole purpose of cryptocurrency, FTX, the reason why these guys exist is because people wanted a platform that did not or was not regulated. And so therefore it's like the wild, wild west. And so when something bad happens, we expect that in a society or in a platform that has no regulation. But now we want to penalize people for operating in an unregulated space for what they did and they said. So which one is it that we really want, and what are we going to hold to as our values go? Do we get to say, well, we're operating in the space where we want no regulation, however, we want to regulate the people who are operating in the unregulated space? And we're seeing this in tons of areas of society right now. And where this starts to get really iffy is that the SEC has not really declared what cryptocurrency is, and so there's no real idea of what they're operating in. So as of now, I don't know if they've actually done anything illegal, because if it was defined as an investment and these people were giving investment advice, they would have handled things, I think, a lot differently than the way that they did handle them, and then they would be responsible for giving bad financial advice. But because we're trying to operate in this gray area, because we want to do whatever we want to do, how then do we regulate these people and what they say? And so if we're going to start suing based on regret, and the reason why I say it's regret, because if FTX and cryptocurrencies had really taken off, and for the people who have made a lot of money in cryptocurrencies, they're not really the ones complaining. It's only the ones who obviously lost their money. And if we decide that we're going to prosecute them, then how far does that go? And the reason why I ask is because I don't know about you, but I promoted the heck, when I was a kid, I promoted the heck out of Toys R Us. I don't know about you, but I loved that place. Everybody I talked to, I told them it was great. And they ended up going out of business. So are we going to look back to me recommending Toys R Us to my friends and family back when I was a kid because I liked it and it eventually ended up going bankrupt? Do you understand what I'm saying? I understand that's a little satirical. It's kind of being a little bit silly. It's facetious. But what I'm saying is, how far does that start to go? Can we now sue our friends who are the ones that talked us into putting our money with FTX and buying cryptocurrencies? Or is it only for people who were paid for it? Or if they were paid to sponsor something and they made money through cryptocurrency, do we get to sue those people as well? And this is where it becomes very difficult to regulate the gray area where we don't want it regulated until it doesn't go our way, then we want it regulated. And so we've got to kind of pick and choose. If we're going to operate in these areas where we want no regulation, we can't then be upset when there's no regulation to back up us losing our money. So I just don't see where it's going to end if these lawsuits do actually go through and these people end up getting in trouble. Now, I feel terrible for people who have lost their money in FTX. I feel terrible for people who have lost their money in cryptocurrencies. I feel terrible for the people who have their money in some of these banks that have collapsed. But this is kind of what people are asking for, and then they're surprised when something happens. And so it's unfortunate, I think, when financial professionals get wrapped up in this. I think it's unfortunate when YouTubers get wrapped up in this, and being in the midst of both of those, I can understand why they would lean towards doing that. Fortunately or unfortunately, FTX didn't come to me and offer me hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to promote it. So thank God that happened. But also because it wasn't really a belief of mine, it was a big reason why I hadn't been promoting it. I don't promote things that I don't do or that I don't believe in. And although a lot of these guys do believe in cryptocurrencies, a lot of these guys did believe in FTX, and I think that they did put their money where their mouth is, and they lost a ton of money as well. How then do we assign fault, and how do we then determine how much fault that they have if they did lose a bunch of their own money as well, if they were putting their money where their mouth is, and they lost maybe more or as much of it they put into it? Should we make it to where they are basically equal? So whatever they made minus whatever they lost, do we just equal that out for people? How do we then make it to where it's fair, because they obviously didn't know the things that were happening, so they weren't involved in it directly, and how are they supposed to know that those things are happening? For instance, if somebody says or recommends a Ford, buying a Ford car or buying their stocks, and somebody's doing something unscrupulous in Ford that makes them go under, there's a big disconnect on knowing whether those things are happening or not. So I don't know. I think people need to take some personal responsibility, that if you're going to invest in unregulated things and you're going to invest in very risky things, that you have to bear a lot of that burden. Where that gets kind of iffy, we'll talk about in the next video, is some of these YouTubers and some of these guys said that it was safe and secure. So does that start getting into a misleading or misrepresentation of what these products actually were? And I think that's where we're going to kind of take that case into the future as these lawsuits move forward. So it's going to be interesting to see where it actually goes. I would love to hear your opinion down below. Don't forget to smash the like button, hit the subscribe, and also click the little bell. And don't forget to check out the next video where I want to go through the reasons why I do think they should be prosecuted, or the reason why they should hold some responsibility for some of the things that they've done, which ones, and really what that could kind of look like, but also where we need to be very careful with this. And I think so that people don't get tricked, you really need to learn how money works. And I think when you understand the fundamentals behind it, you don't get pulled by the crowd into a lot of these things. I think that's where most people lose their money, is by following these hot trends. And I've seen it over the last 10 years. It's been just about everything that you can think of. And the way that you do that is you actually spend the time to become educated about money. Down below, if you want some more information, if you want a book, if you want to have a call about some of these things, or if you just want to have additional resources sent to your email, there's some links down below. But you need to educate yourself so that you don't act on emotions when it comes to investing. It's one of the worst things you can do. And that way you can start taking control of your finances. And so if you want to do better financially, make sure you subscribe to this channel, click the bell. And as always, I will catch you guys later. Bye.